Silken Bonds. The first time Camille met Laurent, he barely looked at her. It was an evening of delicate chatter and soft candlelight at the House of Morel, where Laurent Morel, the enigmatic couturier, held court among Parisian elites. Camille, a mere companion to her employer, a financier's wife, was invisible amid the elegant chaos. But as she hovered near the seamstresses, watching a model twirl in layers of embroidered lace, Laurent turned his head, his gaze piercing through the air as if catching a whisper only he could hear. Camille had not yet spoken a word, but he had seen her. Their second meeting was deliberate. Laurent arrived at her employer's estate unannounced, requesting a private audience. He sat across from Camille in the conservatory, his fingers tracing absent patterns on the linen tablecloth. "There is something in the way you observe," he murmured, "a discipline, a quiet ferocity." She met his gaze without flinching. "And what does that mean to you, Monsieur Morel?" "It means," he said with the faintest of smiles, "that you belong in my atelier." From that moment, Camille was drawn into Laurent's world, a labyrinth of silk and shadows where artistry and control wove together in an intricate dance. She became his muse, his assistant, his confidant. She learned the language of fabric, the secret weight of an invisible stitch, the reverence of a perfectly draped bodice. But most of all, she learned Laurent. He was meticulous, demanding, sometimes cruel in his pursuit of perfection. The weight of his expectations pressed against her shoulders like a bodice laced too tight, but Camille did not break. She adapted, bending just enough to remain, to understand, to master his ways. He tested her patience, pushed her boundaries, but she met each challenge with quiet defiance. Yet as the weeks unfurled, Camille sensed a shift in their balance. Laurent was not accustomed to resistance, and something about her unshakable presence unsettled him. At fittings, his fingers would linger too long on a seam she had adjusted. During meals, he would watch her, waiting for her to flinch at his silences. And on rare occasions, when he spoke her name, it was not as a command, but as something softer, something unraveling. Then came the dress. For months, Laurent had been sketching obsessively, his dissatisfaction growing with each discarded design. But one evening, after watching Camille sew in the dim light of the atelier, his vision crystallized. He designed for her, only for her, a gown unlike any other. A masterpiece of deep sapphire silk, adorned with hand-stitched silver filigree, each thread woven with precision, each pleat whispering secrets of devotion and control. "I want you to wear it," he said, his voice hushed. For me, Camille hesitated. This was not a request, it was a binding. The moment she slipped into that dress, she would no longer be just his muse. She would become something else entirely, woven into his creation, his possession. She nodded. On the night of the unveiling, Camille stood before the gilded mirrors of the House of Morel, bathed in the glow of chandeliers. The dress molded to her frame, its weight both oppressive and exhilarating. As Laurent approached, his hand outstretched to adjust the collar, she caught his wrist. Their eyes locked, a final test, and then she did something he never expected. With steady fingers, she undid the delicate pearl buttons at her throat, one by one, loosening the grip of the dress he had stitched around her soul. And as it slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet in a silent rebellion, she smiled. In that moment, she was no longer his creation. She was free, and Laurent, for the first time in his life, was undone.